This is the grave of the Reverend John E. Price, born February 1823, died February 11th, 1906. And it's my understanding that he was the president of the Garnett League. This is the grave of Joseph B. Popel, who was the vice president of the Garnett League. He died in 1895. His granddaughter, Esther Popel, who graduated from Harrisburg High in 1915, became the first African-American female to graduate from Dickinson. And she graduated Phi Beta Kappa, class of 1919. This is the grave of Anna E. Amos, one of the vice presidents of the Garnett League. She died March 26, 1911. To the right is a tombstone dedicated to her 4 children. To her left is a tombstone of her husband, Aquila Amos, member of the 5th Massachusetts Cavalry, and who is one of the 100 voices for the USCT Grand Review. This is the grave of Ephraim Slaughter, born in 1846, died in 1943. He was the last USCT soldier, last surviving USCT soldier in Dauphin County. There was one other soldier by the name of Maurer in Steelton who was white, who did live longer than Slaughter. But Slaughter was the last of the USCT. Slaughter does not have a Army marker or headstone because he actually went in the service under his slave name, which was Ephraim Newsom. And Ephraim Newsom is inscribed in the rolls, and Ephraim Newsom is listed in the USCT Troops Monument in Washington, D.C. But in checking the records, the pension records show both names. So sometime after the Civil War, Ephraim Newsom dropped his slave name and took the name of Slaughter. So his pension is listed Ephraim Newsom and Ephraim Slaughter. The tallest obelisk in Lincoln Cemetery is this obelisk, which was dedicated to the memory of the colored soldiers and sailors of Dauphin County who gave their lives during the War of the Rebellion. Famous names of the men on one side are Elisha Marshall, Benjamin Foote, Joseph Stokes, James Greeley, George Douglas, and again, one of the members of the Garnett League, Joseph B. Popel. On the other side are the members of the women who erected the monument, headed by Jane Chester and Matilda Greenlee. Linda Reese, in her book, one of her books, has pictures of Matilda Greenlee and also James Greenlee. It's hard to see on this monument, but there is the upside down torch, which has some great significance, I understand, for fallen veterans. This tombstone was placed here in May 30th, 1950, in memory of William Howard Day. The stone was dedicated by the famous W.E.B. Du Bois. I had always thought that William Howard Day was buried elsewhere, and they just selected this particular spot because it was a great spot for the memorial stone. But Todd Mealy, in his great research, pointed out that some scholars and historians from Oberlin College came, and it was their investigation that led to the discovery of this site for William Howard Day, because they found that this is actually where he was buried. This is the grave of Thomas Morris Chester, born May the 11th, 1934, died September 30th, 1892. The original stone was corrected because the birth date had the year transposed. The stone was lifted by members of his Liberian and American family and placed on the stone that you see. This is the stone in loving remembrance of David R. Chester, born August 11th, 1835, died December the 10th, 1889. David Chester, who is believed to be the Chester that played baseball on the 1867 Harrisburg Monrovians, which played against the Philadelphia Pythians, who at that time the business manager was Jacob White Jr., and one of the outstanding players was the famous Octavius Cato. David Chester later became the second African American elected to Philadelphia City Council, and this huge stone was placed here in Lincoln Cemetery by the Philadelphia City Council and members of the Old Reliable Club. To the foot of David Chester, David Chester's first wife was Amelia. After David died, Amelia married the famous Jacob White Jr. of Philadelphia, who was a widower at that time. Amelia lived until 1924. When she died, she was brought back to Harrisburg to be buried beside her first husband. And here we see the tombstone of Amelia Chester White. Below me is the grave of A. Denny Bibb, who, while in 1911, composed the alma mater song of Lincoln University. His beloved Lincoln University band will be one of the two historical black college bands marching in the Grand Review. Lincoln will be there along with Cheney. Bibb was gassed in World War I, never totally recovered. After the war, he was admitted to Dickinson Law School, but because of his disability, he could not finish. He died young at 1934.